Hello. Look how little we have left. We're going to get it done. So let me clean my glasses and let's read. I have had a really difficult day. Not going to get into the details of it. And it looks like my um, speed is dragging. I'm trying to see where a charger is. I know I have one around there somewhere here. No, it's on the charge. Well, I don't know why. It looks laggy. Hi, yes, funny. Hi, Sid. Sorry, guys. I think the connection or whatever. Hey, Farid, is not great. It seems really slow to me, and when I was typing, it seemed slow. So I apologize for that. But I wanted to get on. Terrible day. Wanted to get on here and maybe try and get my mind away from the bad. But there's a reason for everything, and just be grateful for those people you love that are near you, because you never know when you're going to lose them or when you're going to watch them suffer, which either way is terrible. So let's come escape to Pride and Prejudice. Everybody's falling in love. Do you think, in these last few chapters, do you think anything can go wrong, or do you think it's going to be, and they all lived happily ever after? Where do you think it's headed? So page 352, LIX, that's 59, if I'm not mistaken, in Roman numerals. So let's see. Let's see how long this chapter is. Yeah, I'll probably only get one chapter in, Sid. My dear Lizzie, where can you have been walking to? Was a question which Elizabeth received from Jane as soon as she entered the room. Remember, she kind of got off track from the other ones with Mr. Darcy as they fell in love, and the whole world closed to just them. And so now her sister's like, what? Where have you been, sis? Farid, you're right. Now remember, I'm trying to turn over a new leaf and not interrupt the chat, the read for chatting, because I do have some students that follow along, and it's really, really distracting for them, very hard for them. So I'm trying really hard to be disciplined and speak at the beginning and then not interact again until the end. Alyssa, I'm really glad to hear that. So back to reading. And Elizabeth replies, she had only to say in reply that they had wandered about till she was beyond her own knowledge. She colored, she blushed as she spoke, but neither that nor anything else awakened a suspicion of the truth. The evening passed quietly, unmarked by anything extraordinary. The acknowledged lovers, now who are the acknowledged lovers? It means the couple that everybody knows is a couple. So that would be Bingley and Jane. The secret couple, the unacknowledged couple, is Darcy and Elizabeth. They've now established their relationship between themselves, but nobody else knows about it. The acknowledged lovers talked and laughed. The unacknowledged were silent. Darcy was not of a disposition in which happiness overflows in mirth, and Elizabeth, agitated and confused, rather knew that she was happy than felt herself to be so. For besides the immediate embarrassment, there were other evils before her. She anticipated what would be felt in the family when her situation became known. I'm pausing for just a minute to speak to my readers. Muniba, I just saw before I signed on that you joined Discord. I'm so glad to see that. I can't wait to get to chat with you a little bit more over there. And Yasfani, I never know if I'm saying it right. We've already spoken over there, so I'm glad you're there. She anticipated what would be felt in the family when her situation became known. She was aware that no one liked him but Jane, and even feared that with the others it was a dislike which not all his fortune and consequence might do away with. At night, she opened her heart to Jane. Though suspicion was very far from Miss Bennet's general habits, she was absolutely incredulous, unbelievable. You're joking, Lizzie. This cannot be. Engaged to Mr. Darcy? No, you shall not deceive me. I know it to be impossible. This is a wretched beginning indeed. My sole dependence was on you, and I'm sure nobody else will believe me if you do not. Yes, indeed. I am in earnest. Earnest is a great word that means I'm sincere. I speak nothing but the truth. He still loves me, and we are engaged. Jane looked at her doubtingly. Oh, Lizzie, it cannot be. I know how much you dislike him. You know nothing of the matter. That is all to be forgot. Perhaps I did not always love him so well as I do now, but in such cases as these, a good memory is unpardonable. This is the last time I shall ever remember it myself. Miss Bennet still looked all amazement. Elizabeth again and more seriously assured her of its truth. Good heaven, can it be really so? Yet now I must believe you, cried Jane. My dear, dear Lizzie, I do congratulate you. But are you certain, forgive the question, are you quite certain that you can be happy with him? There can be no doubt about it. It is settled between us already that we are to be the happiest couple in the world. But are you pleased, Jane? Shall you like to have him such a brother? Very, very much. Nothing could give either Bingley or myself more delight. So how fun is that going to be? Bingley and Darcy, who are best friends, are marrying sisters who are very close, like best friends. So in that situation, Jane's like, that's going to be really great. I'm excited about that. But we considered it. We talked of it as impossible. And do you really love him quite well enough? Oh, Lizzie, do anything rather than marry without affection. Are you quite sure that you feel what you ought to do? Oh, yes. You will only think I feel more than I ought to do when I tell you all. What do you mean? Why, I must confess that I love him better than I do Bingley. I'm afraid you will be angry. My dearest sister, now be serious. I want to talk very seriously. Let me know everything that I am to know without delay. Will you tell me how long you have loved him? It has been coming on so gradually that I hardly know when it began. But I believe I must date it from my first seeing his beautiful grounds at Pemberley. So does that mean she's in love with his financial status? Or did she see something in him, like how the housekeeper was so sweet about him, so kind about him? And did she begin to say, oh, I've misjudged him? So that's her reference to Pemberley. Another entreaty that she would be serious, however, produced a desired effect, and she soon satisfied Jane by her solemn assurances of attachment. When, convinced on that article, Miss Bennet had nothing further to wish. Now I'm quite happy, said she, for you will be as happy as myself. It's all right here. Sorry, I've got a daughter popping in. That was yesterday too.
Okay.
Love you.
I'll let you know if I think you love you.
All right. Did you do yours?
Yeah.
Dropping it off?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. Now I am quite happy, said she, for you will be as happy as myself. I always had a value for him. Were it for nothing but his love of you, I must always have esteemed him. But now, as Bingley's friend and your husband, there can be only Bingley and yourself more dear to me. But Lizzie, you have been very sly, very reserved with me. How little did you tell me of what passed at Pemberley and Lambton? I owe all of that I know of it to another, not to you. Elizabeth told her of the motives of her secrecy. She had been unwilling to mention Bingley, and the unsettled state of her own feelings had made her equally avoid the name of his friend. But now she would no longer conceal from her his share in Lydia's marriage. All was acknowledged, and half the night spent in conversation. So two sisters, two best friends, unburden their hearts, and they just tell each other everything, and they're like so happy for each other. Good gracious, cried Mrs. Bennet as she stood at the window the next morning. If that disagreeable Mr. Darcy is not coming here again with our dear friend Bingley, what can he mean by being so tiresome as to be always coming here? I had no notion but he would go a shooting or something or other, and not disturb us with his company. What shall we do with him? Lizzie, you must walk out with him again, that he may not be in Bingley's way. Elizabeth could hardly, and Elizabeth's like, okay, no problem. Her mom's like, get rid of him, Elizabeth, because Bingley and Jane need their time together. And Elizabeth's like, I'm good with that. Elizabeth could hardly help laughing at so convenient a proposal, yet was really vexed that her mother should be always giving him such an epithet. As soon as they entered, Bingley looked at her so expressively and shook hands with such warmth as left no doubt of his good information. And he soon afterwards said aloud, Mrs. Bennet, have you no more lanes hereabouts in which Lizzie may lose her way again today? I advised Mr. Darcy and Lizzie and Kitty, said Mrs. Bennet, to walk to Oakham Mount this morning. It's a very nice long walk, and Mr. Darcy has never seen the view. It may do very well for the others, replied Mr. Bingley, but I'm sure it will be too much for Kitty. Won't it, Kitty? Kitty owned that she had rather stay at home. Darcy professed a great curiosity to see the view from the mount, and Elizabeth silently consented. So Bingley's trying to get them alone together. Muniba, I think it's going to be a happy ending. It certainly seems headed that way. Actually, I know, but I hate to give it away. I am quite sorry, Lizzie, that you would be forced to have that disagreeable man all to yourself, but I hope you will not mind it. It is all for Jane's sake, you know, and there is no occasion for talking to him except just now and then, so do not put yourself to inconvenience. During their walk, it was resolved that Mr. Bennet's consent should be asked in the course of the evening. Elizabeth reserved, so Darcy and Elizabeth are walking and talking, and they're like, okay, you have to ask. Back in the day, I don't know that many people do this anymore. Back in the day, then the man would go to the girl's father to ask permission to marry her. And so they're planning that Mr. Darcy will go to Elizabeth's father, Mr. Bennet, this evening after the walk and ask permission to marry her. So it's getting official. She could not determine how her mother would take it, sometimes doubting whether all his wealth and grandeur would be enough to overcome her abhorrence of the man, her hatred of the man. But whether she were violently set against the match or violently delighted with it, it was certain that her manner would be equally ill adapted to do credit to her sense, and she could no more bear that Mr. Darcy should hear the first raptures of her joy than the first vehemence of her disapprobation. Sometimes I just can't get it. I don't know if you guys can tell, I have another cold. And so my throat is killing me reading this. So I keep looking to see how much further, and we're only 12 minutes in, but yeah, it's still a lot of reading. Ace Penguin 67, thank you for telling me that you love the book readings. I appreciate it very much. Let's continue reading. In the evening, soon after Mr. Bennet withdrew to the library, she saw Mr. Darcy rise also and follow him, and her agitation on seeing it was extreme. She did not fear her father's opposition, but he was going to be made unhappy, and that it should be through her means that she, his favorite child, should be distressing him by her choice, should be filling him with fears and regrets and disposing of her, was a wretched reflection. And she sat in misery till Mr. Darcy appeared again, when, looking at him, she was a little relieved by his smile. In a few minutes, he approached the table where she was sitting with Kitty, and while pretending to admire her work, said in a whisper, "Go to your father. He wants you in the library." She was gone directly. Her father was walking about the room, looking grave and anxious. "Lizzie," said he, "what are you doing? Are you out of your senses to be accepting this man? Have you not always hated him?" How earnestly did she then wish that her former opinions had been more reasonable. So there's that pride and prejudice. If she had not prejudged him and acted in such a prideful way, she wouldn't have all this embarrassment and confusion with her dad, who's just trying to protect her. It would have spared her from explanations and professions which it was exceedingly awkward to give, but they were now necessary, and she assured him with some confusion of her attachment to Mr. Darcy. Or, in other words, you are determined to have him. He is rich, to be sure, and you may have more fine clothes and fine carriages than Jane, but will they make you happy? Have you any other objections, said Elizabeth, than your belief of my indifference? None at all. We all know him to be a proud, unpleasant sort of man, but this would be nothing if you really liked him. I do like him, she replied with tears in her eyes. I love him. Indeed, he was no improper pride. He's perfectly amiable. You do not know what he really is. Then pray do not pain me by speaking of him in such terms. Lizzie, said her father, I have given him my consent. He is the kind of man indeed to whom I should never dare refuse anything which he consented to ask. I now give it to you if you are resolved on having him. But let me advise you to think better of it. I know your disposition, Lizzie. I know that you would be neither happy nor respectable unless you truly esteemed your husband, unless you look up to him as a superior. Interesting line, your superior. Your lively talents would place you in the greatest danger in an unequal marriage. You could scarcely escape discredit and misery. My child, let me not have the grief of seeing you unable to respect your partner in life, meaning he's unable to respect his partner in life. You know not you know not what you are about. Elizabeth, still more affected, was earnest and solemn in her reply, and at length, by repeated assurances that Mr. Darcy was really the object of her choice, by explaining the gradual change which her estimation of him had undergone, relating her absolute certainty that his affection was not the work of a day, but had stood the test of many months' suspense, and enumerating with energy all his good qualities, she did conquer her father's incredulity and reconcile him to the match. Well, my dear, said he, when she ceased speaking, I have no more to say. If this be the case, he deserves you. I could not have parted with you, Lizzie, to anyone less worthy. So this is that father-daughter. Farid is about to say, I like the father-daughter relationship in the story. I always did too. My dad and I have a very similar relationship. And so I think that's a lot of the reason I connect so strongly with this book. There are still some things from the time period that throw me, like when he says, you can only respect a man that you see as your superior. And the feminist in me kind of recoils against that. Hey, Francesca. But I think we have to remember the context and the time. I mean, it's very progressive for the time. And I think realistically, there's still that sense that I could live with the sentence meaning that you have to respect this man. Not that he's better than you, but she couldn't marry someone she didn't respect. And that's how I kind of justify it in my mind to make that statement acceptable. But I do love the father-daughter relationship in this. Except the father's kind of a jerk to his other daughters. And not to Jane, but it's obvious the ones that annoy him, the ones that are more like the mother. And you noticed his comment of, I don't want you to seeing you unable to respect your partner in life. And when you look at the wording in the book, the you is italicized there. So he's emphasizing it. To complete the favorable impression, she then told him what Mr. Darcy had voluntarily done for Lydia. He heard her with astonishment. This is an evening of wonders indeed. And so Darcy did everything, made up the match, gave the money, paid the fellow's debts, and got him his commission. So much the better. It will save me a world of trouble and economy. Had it been your uncle's doing, I must and would have paid him. But these violent young lovers carry everything their own way. I shall offer to pay him tomorrow. He will rant and storm about his love for you, and there will be an end to the matter. Oh, Mr. Bennet, you're kind of a cheapskate. They don't have the money to do it. He then recollected her embarrassment a few days before on his reading Mr. Collins' letter, and after laughing at her some time, allowed her at last to go, saying, as she quitted the room, if any young men come for Mary or Kitty, send them in, for I'm quite at leisure. Elizabeth's mind was now relieved from a very heavy weight, and after half an hour's quiet reflection in her own room, she was able to join the others with tolerable composure. She's calmed down. She's all excited now. She's trying to calm down. Everything was too recent for gaiety, but the evening passed tranquilly away. There was no longer anything material to be dreaded, and the comfort of ease and familiarity would come in time. When her mother went up to her dressing room at night, she followed her and made the important communication. What an interesting way of saying she told her mom that she's engaged. I'm going to pause for a minute and greet Francesca, and Claudia 17. Your reading queen. That just, your generation and that queen thing just cracks me up. But I accept it. Thank you. So let's keep reading. We're almost done with this chapter. And then I can get my sip of water, Momaster. Because I'm going to have hot tea with hopefully honey. When her mother went up to her to made the important communication, its effect was most extraordinary. For on first hearing it, Mrs. Bennet sat quite still and unable to utter a syllable. Not was in it under many, many minutes that she could comprehend what she heard, though not in general backward to credit what was for the advantage of her family, or that came in the shape of a lover to any of them. She began at length to recover, to fidget about in her chair, get up, sit down again, wonder, and bless herself. Good gracious, Lord bless me, only think, dear me, Mr. Darcy, Who would have thought it? And is it really true? Oh, my sweetest Lizzie, how rich and how great you will be. What pin money, what jewels, what carriages you will have. James is nothing to it, nothing at all. I am so pleased, so happy. Whoa, such a charming man, so handsome, so tall. Oh, my dear Lizzie, pray apologize for my having disliked him so much before. I hope he will overlook it. Dear, dear Lizzie, a house in town, everything that is charming, 3 daughters married, 10,000 a year. Oh Lord, what will become of me? I shall go distracted. This was enough to prove that her approbation needed not be doubted, and Elizabeth, rejoicing that such an effusion was heard only by herself, soon went away, because it's embarrassing that her reaction is "you'll be rich" instead of "you'll be happy." Like, look at the difference between the father's response and the mother's response. But before she had been 3 minutes in her own room, her mother followed her. "My dearest child," she cried, "I can think of nothing else. 10,000 a year, and very likely more. 'Tis as good as a lord, like the rank. And a special license. You must and shall be married by a special license. But, my dearest love, tell me what dish Mr. Darcy is particularly fond of, that I may have it tomorrow." This was a sad omen of what her mother's behavior to the gentleman himself might be. And Elizabeth found that, though in the certain possession of his warmest affection and secure of her relations' consent, there was still something to be wished for. But the morrow passed off much better than she expected. For Mrs. Bennet luckily stood in such awe of her intended son-in-law that she ventured not to speak to him unless it was in her power to offer him any attention or mark her deference for his opinion. Elizabeth had the satisfaction of seeing her father taking pains to get acquainted with him, and Mr. Bennet soon assured her that he was rising every hour in his esteem. "I admire all 3 mother-in-laws highly," said he. "Wickham, perhaps, son-in-laws. Wickham, perhaps, is my favorite, but I think I shall like your husband quite as well as James." Well, interesting parents. Minima, what a change. In the mother or in the father, yeah? Brennan, hello. I'm about to start watching Kite Runner and just finished a separate piece. Good, great. Are both of those for school, or do you just follow along because you like to read? A typical mother-in-law behavior, Fareed. I agree with you. I have tried really hard not to be that kind of mother-in-law. I try to be, you know, like they're just people. I think it helped me a lot being a high school teacher because I work with young people a lot most of my life. So, Kite Runner is a good one. Not my favorite. Thousand Splendid Suns beats of Hosseini's. That's my favorite, Thousand Splendid Suns. We have got a lot of people that came on to read with me. I'm going to go because my throat is on fire at this point. If you guys are believers in prayer, I have a dear, dear family. It's not a family member, but a family member of the heart who is losing his fight against COVID because of his underlying heart disease. And it's been a really hard day. So love the people that are in your life, cherish those moments. And I would appreciate whatever prayers or energies you could send out. And just that either he can find the strength and his heart is strong enough to survive it, or that he goes peacefully and quickly. That's such a hard place to be in, you know? And I'm sure some of you have been through that. So my heart goes out to you too. So let's put some love and positive energy out there and just keep trying to be our best as we're here on this earth. And thank you, Fareed. Thank you, Kelly. And I hope, if I'm not on in the next few days, it means I'm preoccupied with that. But I'm really trying to get Pride and Prejudice done so that we can get on to Animal Farm. I had somebody ask about that today. So, new people. Papa's a Gopo. I love your audiobooks. Reading Murder on the Orient Express. You got an A in English. I know that had to feel good. Fareed, I'm going to try and go get some tea with honey. And Kelly, I don't even know how I could have gotten sick again. I am on so much medicine left over from COVID and so much immune stuff like vitamins and things like that, how I got another cold. And I'm still taking my antibiotic. I hadn't finished that. So I don't know if it's the strep coming back that we didn't get it out of there. I don't know. But I do want to read again tomorrow. I hope I get the chance to. So if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. And if you have, then I will read to you next time. See ya. 2 chapters.